The rain had been falling steadily for 3 hours when Sarah Martinez first noticed the little girl standing alone outside the hospital gates. As the head of security for the children's wing, Sarah had seen many worried families come and go. But something about this child struck her differently. The girl couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with tangled brown hair and clothes that had seen better days. She clutched a worn teddy bear to her chest and kept looking through the iron bars toward the main entrance. Sean Combs had arrived at Children's Memorial Hospital that morning for what was supposed to be a routine charity visit. His foundation had donated millions to pediatric cancer research, and these visits had become a regular part of his schedule. The media team was setting up in the lobby, security personnel were positioned at every entrance, and hospital staff buzzed around making final preparations. It was the kind of carefully orchestrated event that happened dozens of times each year. But as Sean's black SUV pulled up to the main entrance, he spotted the little girl through the tinted windows. While his security team and the hospital's protocol officers discussed the schedule, Sean found himself watching her. She wasn't trying to get attention or calling out like some fans might. She just stood there quietly, her small fingers wrapped around the metal bars, water dripping from her hair onto her shoulders. The Royal Guard, as Sean's team was sometimes called due to their intense protection protocols, had everything planned down to the minute. Marcus Thompson, the lead security officer, had worked with Sean for over a decade. He knew every possible threat, every potential disruption, and every way to keep his clients safe and on schedule. The hospital visit was supposed to last exactly 90 minutes, with 30 minutes for photos with the children, 30 minutes for the donation ceremony, and 30 minutes for media interviews. Dr. Patricia Williams, the hospital's chief administrator, approached Sean as he stepped out of the vehicle. She had been looking forward to this visit for months, knowing how much the donation would mean to their research programs. The photographers were already positioned, and the selected children and families were waiting in the designated room upstairs. Everything was perfect, except for the small figure still standing in the rain outside the gates. Sean paused on the hospital steps, his attention divided between Dr. Williams explaining the day's itinerary and the sight of the lone child. His security team formed their usual protective circle. Umbrella holders appeared to shield him from the rain, and hospital staff members smiled nervously as they waited for him to move inside. But something made him hesitate, his eyes returning again and again to the girl who seemed so separate from all the organized activity surrounding his arrival. Marcus Thompson noticed Sean's distraction immediately. After years of protecting high-profile clients, he could read body language like a book, and right now his client's attention was clearly not where it should be. The schedule was tight, the hospital staff was waiting, and every minute of delay meant potential security complications. Marcus stepped closer to Sean, ready to guide him toward the main entrance, but Sean raised a hand slightly, a gesture Marcus had learned meant wait. "Who is that little girl?" Sean asked Dr. Williams, nodding toward the gates. The doctor followed his gaze and frowned slightly. She had been so focused on the internal preparations that she hadn't noticed anyone outside the official area. Security wasn't supposed to allow unauthorized people near the hospital during VIP visits, especially not children without adult supervision. Sarah Martinez, watching from her position near the gates, saw the entire group looking in her direction. She quickly radioed her team to find out how the child had gotten past the outer perimeter. The response came back immediately. The girl had been there since before dawn, before any of the security sweeps had begun. She appeared to be waiting for something, but she hadn't tried to enter the hospital grounds or approach any of the staff members who had walked past her throughout the morning. The rain was getting heavier, and Sean could see that the little girl was completely soaked. Her thin jacket offered little protection, and she was starting to shiver, though she made no move to seek shelter. The teddy bear in her arms was as wet as she was, its fur dark with moisture. Something about her quiet determination, her willingness to stand in the rain without complaining, touched something deep in Sean's chest. "Sir, we really need to move inside," Marcus said quietly, glancing at his watch. The media team was already setting up for the first photo opportunity. The children upstairs had been prepared for their meeting. Delays like this could throw off the entire carefully planned event. And Marcus knew that hospital administration had been working for weeks to coordinate everything perfectly. But Sean was already walking toward the gates. His security team scrambling to adjust their formation. Dr. Williams hurried to keep up, her heels clicking on the wet pavement as she tried to understand what was happening. This wasn't part of the schedule, wasn't part of the carefully planned protocol that had been approved by both Sean's team and the hospital board. Marcus spoke rapidly into his radio, alerting the other security officers that the plan was changing, though he wasn't sure exactly how. As they approached the gates, the little girl looked up for the first time. Her eyes were large and dark, and there was something in her expression that was far too serious for someone so young. She didn't seem surprised to see the group approaching, didn't seem excited or nervous like most children would when meeting a celebrity. Instead, she just watched them with a quiet intensity that made Sean slow his steps as he got closer to where she stood. When Sean reached the gates, he crouched down so he was at eye level with the little girl. The security team formed a loose circle around them, but Marcus could feel his carefully maintained protocols beginning to crumble. They were supposed to keep Sean moving, keep him on schedule, keep him safe from unpredictable situations exactly like this one. But something in Sean's posture told Marcus that his client wasn't going anywhere until he understood what was happening here. "Hi there," Sean said softly, his voice barely audible over the sound of the rain hitting the pavement. "What's your name?" The little girl studied his face for a long moment before answering, as if she was trying to decide whether he could be trusted with important information. "Emma," she said finally, her voice small but clear. "Emma Rodriguez." She shifted the teddy bear to one arm and wiped rainwater from her face with her free hand. "Are you really him? The man who helps sick kids?" Sean felt something tighten in his chest at the simple directness of her question. Dr. Williams stepped forward, her administrative instincts kicking in. "Sweetheart, you can't be out here alone. Where are your parents? How did you get here?" But Emma's attention remained focused entirely on Sean, as if the adults surrounding him were invisible. There was something almost desperate in the way she looked at him, though she was trying hard to appear brave. "I took 3 buses," Emma said. Still speaking directly to Sean, "I saved my allowance for 2 months to buy the tickets. My mama doesn't know I'm here." The admission sent a ripple of concern through the group of adults. Sarah Martinez was already on her radio, requesting immediate assistance in locating Emma's family, while Dr. Williams began calculating the liability implications of an unsupervised minor on hospital property, but Sean remained crouched at Emma's level, seemingly unaware of the growing urgency around him. "That's a long way to travel by yourself," he said gently. "What made you come all this way?" Emma's grip on her teddy bear tightened, and for the first time, her composure began to crack slightly. "It's my little brother." "Miguel," she whispered, and tears began mixing with the rainwater on her cheeks. "He's really, really sick, and the doctors at our hospital say there's nothing more they can do. But I heard on the news that you help kids like Miguel, that you give money to make them better." Her voice grew even quieter, and Sean had to lean closer to hear her over the rain. "I thought maybe if I came here, if I asked you myself, maybe you could save him." The words hit Sean like a physical blow. Around him, he could hear Marcus speaking urgently into his radio, Dr. Williams making phone calls, and Sarah coordinating with her security team. But all of that seemed to fade into the background as he looked into Emma's eyes and saw the desperate hope of a big sister, who would do anything to help her baby brother, even travel alone across the city to ask a stranger for help. Marcus Thompson had been in security long enough to recognize when a situation was about to go completely off the rails. The rain was coming down harder now. The media team inside was growing impatient, and hospital administrators were starting to gather near the windows, watching the unexpected scene unfold at their front gates. Every protocol he had established for this visit was being abandoned, and yet he found himself unable to interrupt what was happening between Sean and the little girl. Sean reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone, but instead of calling his assistant or checking his schedule, he handed it to Emma. "What's your brother's name again? And which hospital is he at?" His voice was still soft, but there was something different in it now. A focused intensity that Marcus had seen before when Sean made his biggest business decisions. Emma's eyes widened as she realized he was taking her seriously. "Miguel Rodriguez." He's at St. Mary's General, about 40 minutes from here. He has something called leukemia, and the doctors say he needs a special treatment. But our insurance won't pay for it, and it costs more money than my mama makes in a whole year." She spoke quickly now. As if afraid he might change his mind about listening to her, Dr. Williams stepped closer, her medical training overriding her administrative concerns. "How old is your brother, Emma? And how long has he been sick?" The little girl looked up at her for the first time, seemingly surprised that someone else was interested in Miguel's story. He had just turned 5 last month. "He's been sick for 8 months now, getting skinnier and skinnier. The doctors gave him medicine that made all his hair fall out. But it didn't make him better." Emma's voice began to shake again. "Last week, they told my mama to take him home and make him comfortable. They said there wasn't anything else they could do." Sean stood up slowly, water dripping from his clothes as he processed what Emma had told him. Around him, the carefully orchestrated world of celebrity hospital visits seemed suddenly meaningless compared to the raw desperation of one little girl trying to save her. Marcus watched his client's face and recognized the expression. It was the same look Sean got when he was about to make a decision that everyone would tell him was impossible or impractical. "Marcus," Sean said quietly without taking his eyes off Emma, "cancel everything else today. Clear my schedule for the rest of the week if you need to." Marcus felt his stomach drop. The hospital visit alone had taken months to coordinate, involving dozens of people and significant financial commitments. But he had learned long ago that when Sean made up his mind about something important, there was no point in arguing. Sarah Martinez approached the group, holding a large umbrella and a warm blanket she had retrieved from the hospital. "Emma, sweetheart, you're soaked to the bone. Let's get you inside and dry, and then we can figure out how to get you home safely." But Emma shook her head firmly, stepping closer to the gates as if she thought they might try to take her away before her mission was complete. "I'm not leaving until I know. Miguel is going to be okay," she said with the determination that seemed impossible in someone so small. "I promised him I would find a way to help him, and I keep my promises." The simple statement hung in the rain-soaked air, and Sean felt something fundamental shift inside his chest as he looked down at this extraordinary little girl who had traveled across the city on buses, stood in the rain for hours, and refused to give up on someone she loved. What happened next would be talked about in the hospital for years to come. Sean Combs, one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the entertainment industry, a man whose time was scheduled in 5-minute increments and whose movements were planned weeks in advance, sat down on the wet pavement next to a little girl he had just met. His expensive suit absorbed rainwater. His security team stood in stunned silence, and the carefully planned media event inside the hospital was completely forgotten. "Tell me more about Miguel," Sean said, as if they were sitting in a comfortable living room instead of on a rain-soaked sidewalk. "What does he like to do? What makes him laugh?" Emma's face lit up for the first time since they had started talking, and she began describing her little brother with the kind of detail that only comes from someone who pays attention to everything about a person they love. She told Sean about Miguel's obsession with dinosaurs, how he could name every species and tell you exactly what they ate and when they lived. She described the way he still slept with a nightlight because the hospital stays had made him afraid of the dark, and how he always shared his snacks with her even when the chemotherapy made him too sick to eat much himself. As she talked, Sean found himself building a complete picture of a 5-year-old boy he had never met but was already beginning to care about deeply. Dr. Williams had been making phone calls throughout Emma's story, and now she approached the group with a serious expression. "I've contacted St. Mary's General," she said quietly. "Miguel Rodriguez was admitted to their intensive care unit 3 days ago. His condition has deteriorated significantly, and the family has been told to prepare for the worst." The words hit Emma like a physical blow, and she stumbled backward against the hospital gates. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking completely now. "No, he was okay when I left this morning. He was awake and he smiled at me and he said he would wait for me to come back with help." Tears were streaming down her face, mixing with the rain that continued to fall steadily around them. Sean stood up and pulled out his phone again, but this time he was making calls that would change everything. His first call was to his personal physician, Dr. James Chen, one of the top pediatric oncologists in the country. His second call was to the administrator at St. Mary's General Hospital. His third call was to his accountant, with instructions that made Marcus's eyes widen in shock. "Emma," Sean said, kneeling back down beside her, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. We're going to go see Miguel right now, and we're going to make sure he gets the best treatment available anywhere in the world. But I need you to help me understand exactly what the doctors have said, and I need you to be brave a little bit longer, okay?" The transformation in Emma was immediate and profound. The desperate hope that had been flickering in her eyes suddenly blazed into something much stronger. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand and nodded firmly, clutching her soggy teddy bear tighter. "I can be brave," she said with conviction. "Miguel is counting on me, and I won't let him down." Marcus watched this exchange with growing amazement. In 15 years of working with Sean, he had seen him make impulsive decisions before, but never anything quite like this. The security implications alone were staggering. They were about to abandon a planned, secured location to travel to an unknown hospital with no advance preparation. But as he looked at his client's face, Marcus realized that every protocol in the world was about to be abandoned for the sake of a little boy neither of them had ever met. The convoy that left Children's Memorial Hospital 20 minutes later was unlike anything Marcus had ever organized. Instead of the usual sleek efficiency of a celebrity transport, they were racing against time to reach a critically ill child. With Emma Rodriguez sitting in the front passenger seat of Sean's SUV, directing them through traffic with the urgency of someone who knew every shortcut in the way, City Sean spent the entire drive on the phone, coordinating medical teams, arranging for specialists to be flown in from across the country, and ensuring that money would never again be a barrier to Miguel's treatment. Dr. Williams had decided to come along, bringing with her a folder full of medical contacts and her own determination to help however she could. Sarah Martinez followed in a second vehicle. Having taken personal responsibility for Emma's safety and well-being, when they arrived at St. Mary's General Hospital, the staff was waiting for them with a mixture of confusion and hope. News of Sean's involvement had spread quickly, and the medical team that had been preparing Miguel's family for the worst was suddenly scrambling to present new treatment options that had been financially impossible just hours before Emma led them through the hospital corridors with the confidence of someone who had spent months learning every hallway and elevator. She stopped outside a room on the pediatric ward and turned to Sean with an expression that was both nervous and determined. "He might look different than you expect," she said quietly. "The medicine made him really skinny, and he doesn't have any hair now. But he's still Miguel, and he's the best little brother in the whole world." When they entered the room, Miguel Rodriguez was sleeping, but even in unconsciousness. His breathing was labored and his small body seemed almost lost in the hospital bed. His mother, Maria Rodriguez, sat beside him, holding his hand. And when she looked up to see her daughter accompanied by a group of strangers, her expression went through a rapid series of changes: surprise, confusion, fear, and finally a desperate hope. When Emma began explaining what had happened, Sean approached Miguel's bedside slowly, struck by how small and fragile the little boy appeared. But even sick and sleeping, there was something unmistakably strong about his face. Something that reminded Sean immediately of Emma's determination. On the bedside table sat a collection of small plastic dinosaurs, carefully arranged as if Miguel had been playing with them before he fell asleep. Dr. Chen arrived within the hour, followed by 2 other specialists who had canceled their evening plans to consult on Miguel's case. What followed was a series of conversations that transformed everything the Rodriguez family thought they knew about their son's prognosis. Treatment options that had been impossible became available. Experimental therapies that had been financially out of reach were suddenly on the table. Hope, which had been dying slowly for months, blazed back to life with an intensity that filled the small hospital room. But perhaps the most remarkable moment came when Miguel woke up and saw his sister standing beside his bed, no longer wet from rain, but glowing with triumph. "Emma," he whispered weakly, "you came back. Did you find help for me?" Emma leaned down and kissed his forehead, her eyes bright with tears of joy instead of despair. I found help, little brother. The best help in the whole world. And you're going to get better, and we're going to go home. And you can tell me all about your dinosaurs again? Miguel smiled then. The first real smile his family had seen in weeks, and reached out to touch the teddy bear that Emma still carried. 6 months later, Miguel Rodriguez would be declared cancer-free. His treatment funded by a foundation that Sean established specifically for children whose families couldn't afford cutting-edge medical care. Emma would become the foundation's youngest advisor, helping to identify other families in desperate need of help. And Marcus Thompson would completely rewrite his security protocols. Having learned that sometimes the most important moments happen when you abandon all the rules and follow your heart. Instead, the story of how a little girl's love for her brother changed everything would be told and retold. But those who were there that rainy day would always remember the moment when Sean Combs spoke softly to a determined 8-year-old. And every carefully planned protocol was abandoned in favor of something infinitely more important: the simple, powerful act of one human being helping another.